Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks so much for joining this afternoon's webinar. It's great to have you with us. This is the latest in the series of PMI's webinars. This week's webinar is hosted by my colleague Warren, and very shortly I'll hand over to him. My name is Rich, and I'll be manning the Q&A desk today. Please do keep me busy, field your questions throughout the session, and I will handle them and pass them through to Warren as we go through the session. But without further ado, I'd like to hand over to Warren. Just a quick reminder, today's session is being recorded, both voice and screen, and we'll share this with you after the event. Thanks very much, and I'll hand over now to Warren.
Thanks, Rich. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Warren Knight, and today I'm going to be discussing the value of process management in strategy deployment. This will include exploration of the current challenges that we all face in our organizations, the need to respond with agility, how our organizational systems and processes relate to that ability to be agile, and finally, what the impact of process management is and can have on your approach. Today's situation is indeed extraordinary because the changes we face are so rapid and so wide-ranging. This is causing us all to consider our approach very carefully. Adaptability and agility has always been desirable characteristics in an organization, but actually more now than ever, they are essential. Agility is a word that I hear used a lot in business, but for the purposes of this session, I'd really like to describe what I mean by agility in this context. So for me, agility is about the ability to effectively and importantly, continually capture the changes that are happening in our business environment, to be able to align a strategy to those changes in response, and of course then being able to engage and mobilize the organization to deliver that strategy. With over 30 years of experience of helping organizations to improve performance through process improvement and management, now more than ever, we believe systems thinking and process thinking are instrumental to success, because a process-orientated approach really does have a profound effect on our ability to be agile. It's been my experience over many years working with many different organizations that work hard to ensure that they have a structured network of really robust and capable processes that work together to achieve the goals of the organization, and have worked hard to create a cadre, a team of dedicated, capable people who are able to then manage that network, are in a really, really good place to prosper in this situation. Why is process management so important? Well, when I talk to people about managing business assets, typically people think about people, they think about equipment. It's rarely that people think about processes. Yet if we stop to consider it just for a second, actually it's our processes that transform other important assets and inputs into successful outcomes. And so that is my belief. What I'd advocate is that we have to manage our processes as assets in the same way as we naturally do with people, for example. And so therefore, when I talk about process management, what I mean is a competent team of people with clearly defined accountabilities who are actively adopting and applying a structured methodology on a daily basis to ensure that the organization's processes are well designed, well managed, operated, and of course improved. The reason why I've highlighted some of those words and labored them a little bit is because, again, in my experience, I've come across lots of organizations that, have named their processes, may even have people in the organization who are, in inverted commas, labeled process owners. But that doesn't necessarily mean that they have a real structured live methodology system in place for actually ensuring that those processes are well loved, managed, and improved.
Warren, it's Rich. Warren, it's Rich here. Sorry to interrupt your flow. I just had a question through in the Q&A desk. A very keen eye has noticed something, not on your previous slide, but the one before. I wonder if you could just flick back to that for us, please.
I will do my best. This one here?
Yeah, that's one. So very, very keen. Thanks very much for the question. The diagram at the bottom, where the people, materials, machines, methods. The question is, they noticed that the lines weren't straight. And why are they drawn like that? Why have we represented them like that? And can you talk through that diagram a little more? I just thought rather than wait till the end, we'll jump into that now, if that's okay with you.
Okay, thanks, Rich. Yes, the simple reason why we've got wiggly lines rather than nice straight lines is to do with the fact that variation exists in our processes. And actually, as customers, we are very sensitive to variation. What we actually want is high levels of consistency, and we relate consistency with high quality. Take broadband, for example. Organizations can offer really high levels of bandwidth, of speed, but if that service is not delivered consistently, then it becomes less of a satisfaction factor in the eyes of the customer. So it's really necessary, and it's part of the fundamental methodology of process management to understand the variation that is occurring in our inputs, and also the variation in the way that we design and carry out the process, so that we are able to manage and eliminate that variation for the customers.
Thanks, Warren. And I'm sure I can see a couple of our telecoms clients are on here. We'll appreciate the example, whether that was deliberate or not, I don't know. Thanks very much either way.
Thanks, Rich. Right, so where was I? Okay, so what I want to do now is I just want to to think about the challenge that we're facing in a little bit more detail. At this time, on a personal level, we're all in the process of making a transition to this new world where this COVID exists. And in the early stages of this story, I'm sure many of us experienced a level of shock initially, and maybe denial that anything in our world would be different as a result of this. However, I think, as I noticed particularly in the news, as it took hold, we all began to get a sense of change and the need for change and the need to respond differently. I think some aspects of that change are clear. I think there are many aspects or impacts of this that are hidden and yet to be uncovered. But as this happens and we become more sensitized to this change, then we begin to understand that we will need to respond differently in the future. Doing what we've always done is not going to be a good result for the future. Hopefully, we are all on this call, past the point of hitting the bottom, letting go, and are now beginning to search for that meaning, if you like, in the new world. What are the changes and what do these represent? For some of us in the short term, this will be about survival. However, for all of us in the longer term, it will be about understanding the situation and how we start to turn this to our advantage. So if you now think about creating an advantage, what's important? Well, right now, across our entire stakeholder range, things are changing, of course, just like it is for us personally. Either requirements and needs are being redefined and reprioritized, or indeed, as I noticed, lots of new needs are being developed. And it's our job in our organizations to be able to respond to those new needs and requirements. It is certainly, from my perspective, a really dynamic, and I believe it to be a lasting situation that I think the reverberations will be here for some time. So how ready are you? And are you agile enough to respond to those stakeholder requirements? How well are you listening? How well do you actually understand what has changed and what your stakeholders now require of you? How planned and considered, how comprehensive is your response to those new or changing needs?
Hi Warren, it's Rich again here.
Yep.
Another question just come in on this slide. Thinking about that model on the right-hand side,
yes.
Questions around, in your opinion, would you say, and experience, would you say any one of those is more important than the other, and how would you prioritize between them?
Well, that's a great question, Rich. Thanks for that one.
And you know I like to keep them coming.
Yeah, of course. Well, of course, you know, the purpose, the fundamental purpose of an organization is to create and serve a customer need. So the customer, the voice of the customer, you know, remains at the center of our strategy and our goals. Lots will change in our operating environment. So the voice of the business and how we go about operating in this new world and the constraints that those represent will also be important, as will regulators, etc. I think is not that the priorities have changed, but my personal view is that you know, COVID it's a community problem. If we didn't live in communities, if we didn't interact, COVID would not be a problem. So I think probably nothing changes as such, but one thing that will be heightened is the voice of the community and how we work in the future, how that will impact the community, like travel, for example, to work. So in summary, I don't think it changes the priority, but it may actually highlight and maybe enhance our view of certain stakeholders.
Warren, that's great.
Okay, thank you. And of course, the third one is, even if you do really have a good grasp on what's going on and what your customers now require of you and your suppliers, etc., and you've planned a response, actually even the best strategies fail if you are unable to execute them effectively. So engaging the organization around that strategy is imperative. If, as I said, this is a truly dynamic and lasting situation where we have seen a certain amount of change, but there's more hidden, there's more to come as this starts to kind of, you know, the pebble in the pond, and we start to see the ripples coming outwards. Then our goal actually got to be more than just adapting to the here and now changes. Those will obviously be important. We have to respond to them. But let's not forget that what we must also do is think about the future, think about that it's not just about adjusting to the changes right now, but the fact that there will continue to be change that we will continue to need to adjust to. So in my view, what's really required here is thinking about how we put the organization into a state of continuing improvement. And I think the pictures on the right-hand side give a really good demonstration of that, this difference. And we often talk about transformation, but in a sense, transformation has an end point. I don't think this has. And so the second picture there, and seeing how the management of data has developed through the years, is more that sense of transforming, and it will continue to change. There will be no end point to that. And so I think that will have an interesting, or cause an interesting dynamic in terms of how we think about strategy. I said earlier in my starting words that actually your ability to be agile is very much related to your systems and processes and how capable and robust those are. For me, the primary fundamental reason why I'm saying that is because our systems of processes provide context in this situation. Because what we do, in other words, our work processes, determines what we achieve for our stakeholders. Therefore, if we're not looking at all of this in the context of our processes, it's going to be really difficult for us, in my view anyway, to be able to listen to our stakeholders effectively, to be able to assign meaning to their requirements, and of course then focus our response in the right areas of the system in the organization. And with that in mind, what I would like to do is to just spend a couple of minutes looking at a model that we have used for many years to great effect in PMI to help primarily leadership teams to understand their business, their enterprise as a system of processes, and to develop that context, therefore, that I just mentioned in the previous slide. It is a systems view, so what we're talking about here is a system. So we're looking at a network of interdependent components that are working together to achieve the aim of that system. The interdependent components that we're talking about here are our processes. The model suggests that we have three types of processes. We have core processes, and core processes, if you understand this word Gemba, these are the processes where the value is added for our end customers of the system. So they directly add value. The second type of processes are enabling and support. Their job is to look internally, typically at the core processes, to ensure that those core processes are working effectively and efficiently. It's the third set of processes, which we call leadership processes, where I just want to spend some time. In order to describe them best, I often think of an organization as some kind of living organism. Think about it as a human being. Now, as humans, we would not last long if we didn't have eyes and ears, senses, our ability to sense our environment around us, in order to identify danger, for example. And it's exactly the same for our organization as a living system. we need processes that are listening to our environment and generating data, both internally and externally. Now, going back to us as human beings, okay, we are sensing some form of danger, and that information from our eyes and ears is then going to our brain to make sense of that and to plan a response. Again, our organization, our leadership processes are no different. We have brain type processes. We call those develop strategy, develop plans. And it's the job of those to take the data that we're generating, to make sense of it, and to plan a response. Finally, of course, we need to take action. Maybe we need to run away, evade, dodge the danger somehow, whatever it is. That requires a nervous system. And what the nervous system does is to send impulses into the body to do something. And it's, again, the same with our organization. We need processes that signal to the organization, part one, signal to the organization that change is required. And here's the objectives, if you like. And secondly, then, create an ordered, structured, and effective response in changing our core and our enabling processes to meet the new demands. So we've got the eyes and the ears, we've got the brain, and we've got the nervous system. So if you think back to my definition of agility being the ability to identify what's changed in the environment, that's the top right. Our ability to plan a comprehensive response, that's top middle. And then to deliver the new strategy, top left, we can suddenly see that actually what drives agility are actually leadership processes in our organization. And of course, because they're processes, then same with any other business process, we need to ensure that they're effective. We need to ensure that they're well designed, well managed, well operated, and of course, where necessary, improved. And what I would also say at this point is that this isn't a one-time deal. Like what I said earlier about the difference between transformation and transforming, these processes are constantly operating. We're constantly scanning and sensing our environment as change occurs, constantly feeding that into the brain to make sense of that, and then to adopt a plan and respond. So if our leadership processes and our system are heavily linked to our ability to be agile, then obviously, as I mentioned, focusing on making sure that they're well managed and improved will help us to improve our agility. So therefore, here's two questions for me that if we can answer these, we're well on our way. So first of all, how do we best ensure that we're making good decisions about what changes we need to make? And secondly, when we've made those decisions, how can we ensure that we respond to the design and redesign needs for our processes in an efficient and structured manner? So the first question for me is about the management and improvement of our listening processes and our strategy development processes. And the second question is about how we improve the way that we improve. I'd like to now just touch upon those three aspects in a little bit more detail, and to give you my view on how process management helps us to respond to those three areas and therefore improve our agility. So let's start with listening, both inside and outside of our organization system. For me, data generation happens in two ways. We will have formal listening processes in place to listen to customers' needs, whether that be business to business and having meetings with our customers. If it's B2C, it might be some kind of focus groups or customer interviews. We will certainly be wanting to understand how our staff are thinking and feeling at this time, and maybe having some kind of structured survey process to understand that. Technology, again, as things change, even now with us being on this broadcast, the need for us to scan and understand what's the latest technology, like Zoom, for example, which is going to help us to operate as best that we can. Being aware of and keeping in tune with all the changes that Microsoft are doing to update Teams, etc., etc., etc. But actually, I want to spend a moment on informal data generation. Because right now, as your organization continues to do its daily business, we are generating data, both in our core processes and our enabling processes, about our stakeholders. So consider for a second procurement. They'll be busy purchasing, managing the supply base. And so therefore, what they're actually doing in doing that is engaging with the supply chain and generating data about what's going on. Now, if you're in a type of business where you rely heavily for success on a supply chain, then actually the voice of the supplier as a key stakeholder and being able to listen to that voice effectively is really important. So tapping into this data is something for you to think about because it's really useful data. Now, in terms of process management, and how does process management help with this listening and this data generation? If I just take the formal process for a second, that's pretty obvious because they are processes like every other process within the business. And so therefore, we can apply the approach, the methodologies, the tools, etc., to ensure that they are well designed, well managed, and well operated, and so delivering the data that we require in a timely fashion, accuracy, etc. When we turn to the informal side of things, actually, in my experience, working with lots of organizations, it's very difficult to tap into, to mine all of this implicit data and experience that exists within, salespeople, procurement, customer services, without having a system in place. And if we go back to my definition of process management, then actually, if we have process management, if we have a process management system in place, then actually, we naturally have a system to help us tap into that data. Why? Well, first and foremost, process management methodology is based upon, at its heart, listening to customer and stakeholders' needs and think about how we respond to those. So if you have a process management system in place, you're already thinking about this at the granular level, at each process level. Secondly, you've got a cadre of people whose role it is to continuously capture and analyze those requirements. And because they're competent to do this in a structured manner, it means that they really do bring this data to life and give it real meaning. Moving on to the brain, so that's the top middle processes within the system, leadership processes. Of course, there will be a need to take the data that you generate and to either define or redefine a strategy. So again, developing a strategy is a process like all others. And so you'll want that process to be well designed, managed and operated so that you are able to really put your finger on what are the priorities? There'll be a lot of things pinging off. There'll be a lot of issues. There'll be a lot of challenges and changes. But the mark of a good strategy is it can really focus upon those things that are vital. Remember what I said earlier about stakeholders and priority. For me, the mark of a good strategy is one that is customer value centric. Okay? Because success comes through making our customers successful and adding value. So a good strategy process, development process, will challenge us to think about how are we going to provide value for our customers in the new world. Of course, there'll be lots of operational challenges for us to consider. And then it's about bringing all this together in a set of high-level objectives and actions that the organization can really understand and get behind. The final part of our road to agility, if you like, is about this nervous system. And for me, this is broken into two areas. We've got the signaling part of the nervous system, which is about communication. It's about how we signal to people in the organization that we need to do something different in our processes. And then there's the second part of that, which is the actual reaction, and how do we ensure that we are reacting effectively. Again, in my experience, having been involved in lots of organizational deployment of plans and strategy, particularly if you need to do this at speed, then you need a way of clearly communicating those strategic objectives throughout the organization in a way that everybody understands within their level and role, so that you can create really crystal clear alignment from top to bottom. A good strategy deployment process is more than just setting a load of objectives. It's more than chucking objectives into your organization and say, please deliver these things. Actually, an effective deployment process is an iterative process of setting an objective and then encouraging the organization to plan a response to that objective, and then working together between different levels of management in the organization in agreeing those objectives and plans. And if we do that, then we're going to ensure that we're engaging the breadth and depth of the organization's knowledge and expertise, which again is a fundamental thinking principle of process management. Always involve those people who understand the processes best, the people who operate them. So how does process management itself help? Well, in my experience, working with those organizations where they have a process management system in place, it really does enhance the process of deployment. The reasons for this, firstly, if I think about communication, if I have a system of process-orientated roles in place, I therefore have a natural communication channel through those process owners, managers, and operators in which to send out these signals. Secondly, is actually the role of the process owner to lead their process teams, their process managers and operators in the translation of business strategy into a set of improvement objectives and actions for their process. So these people are already primed and ready to do this deployment work. And thirdly, where you have a process management system in place, you have processes defined. That will include understanding for each process internal customers and supplier interface points, internal and indeed external. This is an important part of systems thinking and make sure everything is working together. So what it does for us in a deployment context is enable a much more systemic rather than siloed approach to delivering the strategy. On the actual making a change side of the nervous system, well, this is meat and two veg for process management, because fundamentally what process management brings is a system by which we make change in a structured, logical, systematic, effective and efficient way. And actually, that system of improvement is more than just a set of tools. Actually, it's a methodology by which we apply tools in improvement activities, and that is all underpinned by a set of thinking principles that are really conducive to maximizing the opportunity for change. I'm shortly going to be coming to a summary, so I'd appreciate it, and then followed by that a Q&A session. So if you'd like to start thinking about any questions that you have and start firing them over to Rich, I would really appreciate that. So what's my summary reflections? We are all experiencing a state of rapid and wide-ranging change. I often talk to my clients about short-term variation and long-term variation, and the difference between management and leadership. Short-term variation and therefore the need for management comes from looking out the window and asking, do we need an umbrella today? Long-range variation, leadership response is about looking out the window and saying, what are we going to do about global warming? Well, actually, in this situation, that has been compressed considerably. And, it feels to me like we're seeing long-range variation in a very short-term circumstance. And it's essential that we have the ability in our organizations to respond, okay, to match that pace of change, actually, if not exceed it, to really get a grip on it, to take advantage, not only survive but prosper. This matching or exceeding the rate of change is, of course, what we mean by agility. And again, just to say, from my point of view, this agility comes from our ability to continually, and that's an important part of this, continually listen, plan, and respond. I hope what I've demonstrated in my description of the leadership processes and the system, that actually a robust, capable system of processes hold the key to success with agility. And a process management system will help ensure success through ensuring that those processes and systems are and remain robust and capable. Survival right now, survival is the game for lots of organizations. Some will not see a lot of change right now. Some will. But actually, I believe the change is there. And actually, survival may only impact some, but continuing to prosper in the long term has implications for all of us. And so therefore, picking up my point about transformation versus transforming, I truly believe that actually in the future, our business strategy must focus as much on answering the question, how do we make change happen, as it does on what changes do we need to make. Yes, we need to understand how we're going to climb the current mountain, but ultimately, what we need to do is have the capability of climbing any mountain, whatever's thrown at us. Delivering such a strategy will require investment. And that investment will be in building a process management system. What I mean by that is that it's the structure, it's the roles, it's the actual physical management systems and the competence that is required to really manage and improve those processes in your organization as though they are critical assets. Put as much effort and time into managing your processes as you do your people. That's where success will come from. And actually, my final point is that if you make this investment, you will not only reap the reward organizationally, but time and time again, I have the joy of witnessing the really incredible impact that that has on us as people and individuals in giving us new ways of thinking about our work and new ways of working in methods that enable us to really take control of our processes and be personally successful. So thank you very much for listening.
Hi Warren, it's Rich here. You're not getting away that lightly. So we've had several questions come in. A few slides ago, you mentioned, you used the term signal. Can you explain what you meant by that, is the question from Dave. Thank you, Dave.
Yes, so for me, the signal is the communication part. A good deployment process actually is a good communication process. Because what we're doing is we're taking a strategy which will be a very, very high level set of objectives. And slowly but surely what we have to do, both across and down into the organization, we have to engage with each level and the breadth. We have to then discuss and communicate and understand these objectives and then start to figure out, okay, what our response is. And in figuring out our response, what we're actually doing is revising the objectives for the next level down. And so it's this process of communication to ensure that ultimately everybody is aligned, okay, and working in the same direction. Because what we want our organization to be a system and not a heap. The difference between a system and a heap, of course, is a system is about all the bits working together to achieve a common goal. And that's what a good deployment process is about. It's about enabling that to happen. Whereas a heap is just a bunch of things that don't work together. They have no interrelationship.
Okay, thanks, Warren. Another one here from a question from Moses. Will the formal structure you've described for process management get in the way and take too long?
Does structure cause a problem? That's a good question. I think it's quite natural for us to be wary of structure and a disciplined approach, because it often, and I hear this a lot when I talk to people about the concept of standardization, what people actually feel is this is some kind of straitjacket and the need to perform like some kind of robot. In truth, that's not the case. In truth, good systems, okay, allow and support the need for flexibility, and enable you to be flexible in a useful way, okay? Because without structure, flexibility, what we mean by that is just chaos. It's just doing what you want. Okay. I think the other part of it is that, does it take too long? Well, that depends upon how much of an investment, how much the leadership of the organization believe in this and are willing to invest in it, would be my view.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thanks, Warren. And I guess the key theme there sounds like one of consistency. To ensure consistency, the structure is necessary, and the actual structure is dependent on your situation.
Yes,
is what I heard there. Okay, great. I've got a question from Tracy here as well, Warren. Thinking about a system of process management and performance management, and adapting processes to working remotely. Typically, visual management systems and huddles require everyone to physically be together. How does some of the components work when you're working remotely?
I think if you have the right technology in place, there is no reason for it being an inhibitor. Mm-hmm. I think on the other side of it, if you think about one of the benefits, one of the purposes of visual management is to bring the team together. Actually, more than ever, with people working remotely, we need an effective system which engages people to discuss things in the right way within a structure. So I think with the right technology, actually, I think it's certainly adding benefit. Mm-hmm. in the current place.
And I'd just add to that, Warren, actually, if I may. I'm meant to be manning the Q&A desk, but now I'm interfering. Imagine that.
Yes.
For those of you who know me will know what I'm up to. So I'd just build on that point. The replication I've seen specifically on this point of the physical VMS and physical huddles, the most successful examples are where people have actually migrated their existing platforms into technological solutions for remote delivery. So where you've got physical boards with visual management systems established, the most success we've seen has been in recent months has been where people haven't stopped because haven't abandoned their structure because things have changed. They've adapted the structure, and the temptation when the world changes so rapidly around you is to drop everything and go into crisis management mode. And actually, what Warren's describing here is a robust system that can be flexed. And I think where you have got things like VMS and huddles, adapt those to the new circumstance. Don't ignore them, and actually you were doing them for a reason previously. Take what was great about them and get them delivered remotely. And we've seen some really good examples of that recently.
And I think yeah, absolutely right. And just to reiterate that point, I think yes, I agree, Rich. It now more than ever we need processes like that, systems in place to make sure that we stay together and we're coordinated in our activities. And I think also you're absolutely right. I mean, be creative. Use the technologies that you have, readily available around you to create, a virtual version. It doesn't have to be perfect. Mm-hmm. The important point is that you are generating the data, you're communicating it, you are reviewing it as a team, and you're responding appropriately.
Mm-hmm. So we've got time for one more question, I think, here, Warren. Got another one just come in. Thinking about the system and structure that you've described, how do you bring, it's a big question, how do you bring the people with you?
If we mean well, yes, okay. I find actually bringing the people along is actually quite easy, because it's part of the methodology, and it's part of our approach. To engage people who do the work in helping them to improve the work. So what I find in programs is actually, once you engage and you start to provide people with knowledge and insight into how they can do this, and helping them to actually work on their work processes to improve them, then actually they very quickly understand that actually this is as much benefit to them personally as it is to the organization. And I'm very much an advocate of the fact that those things need to come hand in hand. So it enables, and I've time and time again, I've had feedback around, it enables people to respond to some of the frustrations that they've got in operating the process. It enables them to reduce and eliminate waste and non-value added activity, which means that they get more pride out of their work and they're able to feel that they're delivering real value. So actually getting people on board with this is through getting them working on their processes, and very quickly follows as a response.
Warren, that's excellent. We haven't got time to respond to any more of the questions, but we have got them in the chat solution. We will come back to you on each one of these shortly. Thank you very much for asking the questions. Warren, if you'd like to go to your final slide so everyone's got your contact details, that'd be really helpful.
Indeed, yes, and please, if you would like to connect, that would be great.
So thank you very much everyone for joining us this afternoon. It's been great to have you. We have just signed off this week the schedule for the webinars for the whole of the month of July as well, and we're running these every Friday. Please do look out on our social media channels for them, and we release them every Monday on LinkedIn. If you don't follow us on LinkedIn, please do follow the company page and you'll get all the latest updates there. As we mentioned, we will share the recording, both the visuals and the audio with you. That usually by the time it's compressed takes a couple of days, so it'll be out early next week and we'll email that directly to you. In the meantime, you have our contact details. You may have gathered we love to talk, so please don't hesitate to get in contact with us. We close out for today, and thank you again for joining us. Have a safe and relaxing weekends.
Thank you very much.